Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be talking about the 10 classics that I want to get to this year or next year, or just in the short term / long term. So let's just get into it. And also, I'm kind of a fan of classics. I'm not a person that's really into them, that's all I read, but I'm not someone that's against them. So yeah, that was just a little preface. Let's just get into the video. So the first book I want to talk about is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This is probably one of the most well-known books I have on this list. This is a book that I've been recommended by so many people that don't even like classics, so I was I have to pick this up, because when you're recommended a book by people that don't like classics, I feel like you just have to take the opportunity, you know what I mean? Because it's definitely gonna be a great classic. And if you've read it, comment down below what you thought of it. And the next one is David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. I absolutely am a really big fan of Charles Dickens. I know that a lot of people aren't, but I generally do love his books. I've read Oliver Twist, Great Expectations, and A Christmas Carol. It's so funny because A Christmas Carol is my favourite one I've read, and I can't even remember the name. But David Copperfield is about an orphaned, no, he's not orphaned, but he's a poor man who becomes a famous novelist. And many people that are critics of literature think that this is probably the most based on Charles Dickens' life, because as a kid he had to work because his family couldn't afford to survive, and his father got put in jail because he ended up in debt, because that's what happened to people back then. So yeah, and then he obviously becomes a famous novelist, so people think that this book is based on his life. The next one is The Secret Garden. Okay, this one has been on my shelf for so long, and I think out of all of them it's probably the least the best to approach, because I feel like the language in this is very similar to if not the same to how we would write now, and I think it'll be the easiest, so it's probably the one I'm going to get to first, to be honest. And also a film is coming out, or has it come out, I'm not sure, but there is a film, a new one, and I feel like a film is always an extra incentive to read a book, because when there's a film you're okay, now I have to read it because I can't watch the film before I read the book. So that's definitely the main incentive. And if you guys don't know what it's about, it's basically about this girl that gets sent away, and I think it's her uncle she's living with, and then she discovers this secret garden, and it's a place for her and people she meets to just run away from their problems in life and just have a good time. Okay, number 4 is Little Women. This is another one that's just gotten made into a movie, so I'm more excited to read it. To be honest, most people think I've read this book, but I honestly haven't. It's been on my TBR for so long, and it's something that I always thought I'd get to so much earlier on, but I just haven't. And now I'm excited to finally hopefully get to it. It's basically about four sisters with very different personalities, and it's just going through how they cope living during the Civil War. And I think it's nice when you see this contrast of people in a book, but they all come together with a main objective, I guess, and the love. And I think it's nice to see relationship between sisters, because it's not something you really see that often. Mostly it's romantic relationships or friendships, so seeing 4 sisters is going to be a different dynamic that I'm really excited to see. The next one is Pride and Prejudice. Honestly, this is another one, I don't know why I haven't read it, but it's basically about this girl called Lizzie, and her mom really wants her to get married. She wants to marry all her daughters, because back then that was, kind of a status thing, and a way to uplift the way people see your family is to get your kids married. And this new guy comes to town, rich, well off, and the mom's yeah, I want you to marry that guy. And then, as per usual, Lizzie doesn't like this guy, and she starts to like a guy called Mr. Darcy. And we all know where those end up, those kind of stories. This one has so many remakes that I think it's one of those books that if you're struggling a bit with reading it and the language, you can totally watch half of the film, come back, watch another adaptation, come back, and it's kind of nice, I think, when you can do that, just to kind of break up the kind of writing in the Old English to make it a lot more digestible. The next one is The Great Gatsby. This is another one. I feel like this whole list is just me saying, I don't know why I haven't read this. I know why I haven't read this. Just need to stop. But Great Gatsby is about this guy Jay Gatsby, and he falls in love with this girl called Daisy, and it's the whole story of that. Honestly, I don't know much about Great Gatsby because I haven't watched the film, which comes to a surprise to a lot of people because I think it's a very popular film, especially since it has Leonardo DiCaprio in it. Any film with Leonardo DiCaprio is very popular. And yeah, that's all I really know, to be honest. So I'm going to just go into it and, you know, with no real expectations. So I think it might be one of the best just because I'm going in with zero expectation of it. The next one is Animal Farm. This book is one that really appealed to me because it just kind of seemed to have a bit more of a childish like play, and seems to be a lot easier to read and to get into. And I think it's one of those things where, like, because it's not human characters, basically about animals that are being oppressed, and they start their own farm and they take it over, and then they fight for them as justices. And I love stories that actually kind of have like animal characters, like Wind in the Willows. That was a really good book with animal characters. So I think sometimes having a different character dynamic can really change up a classic, because I think when people think of classics, they think of these thick books about boring old gentlemen and women that like had no real place in society, blah blah blah. But this is very different, and it kind of changes that up a little bit. The next one that I want to read is Jane Eyre. You know, it's one of those books that's like everyone talks about and all people that like really into literature know about, and I've never actually read it. So that one I just want to get to. That's just kind of one I add on the list for the fact of how well known it is, rather than necessarily how I view it or how I know it to be. The next one is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. This one is one I wanted to read for a while, especially after I watched Once Upon a Time. If you watched Once Upon a Time, you'll probably know what I'm referring to. When they brought in the character of Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, I'd heard of them, but I never really knew like the story. And it's basically about when one of Dr. Jekyll's friends starts noticing like really strange things happening between Dr. Jekyll and this guy called Hyde, and it's basically a split personalities, and it just seems so interesting and so different to anything else I've really heard of classic wise. So that's like my main motivation. I feel like when it comes to classics, I like to read things that are like classic, like this is like thing that happens in most of the stories, but also things that are really different and change the narrative a little bit, because it makes it more interesting, especially when you're trudging through a book that might have difficult language and things you find hard. You need a bit of like change, or else you're just going to really struggle all the time and not really have the motivation to carry on. And the last one is, I think it's like I couldn't make a classic video without mentioning, and that is Shakespeare. And I want to read Much Ado About Nothing. The only Shakespeare plays I've read so far are Othello, which I absolutely adored, and Romeo and Juliet, which I absolutely hate. I honestly haven't even read any other stories, but I generally think Romeo and Juliet is Shakespeare's worst. I'm just not a fan, and I know so many people are, and I wish I could be a fan because I want to like get excited about it like everyone else does, but I just don't see the appeal, and I don't think it's that great or that interesting. I found myself just getting bored. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Much Ado About Nothing, which is another one of his tragedies, and I really do want to try out his tragedy story, another one, because I feel like I'm very split on how I feel about his tragedies. I do think he's a good writer. I just didn't like one story, and that doesn't mean that you shouldn't give another one of someone's work a go. So I definitely will. So that's why I wrote this here, just because I need to give him another chance. So that is my 10 books of classics that I want to read. Comment down below any classics you want to get to, because I feel like a lot of people have long lists of classics they want to get to, but they're just the ones you always put off the most, and I don't really know why. But yeah, remember to like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!